build that bridge or create that process or the best practices to get you from where you believe you want to be and the life you want to live to where you're not necessarily stuck at, but where you're at right now.
And now, great minds and one bald guy.
Hello, everybody. I'm excited today to talk to you about in our Smart People and a One Bald Man series. I'm happy to introduce Gabe Isaacson, Chief Strategy Officer from Integrity. I'd like to talk about his lineage, but I think he's probably got a better bio explanation than I do. A lot of big words. Then I'd like to introduce Gabe Isaacson. Gabe.
Todd, thanks so much. It's a treat to get to chat with you. Two smart guys talking, I promise. But Todd, thanks. So I joined Integrity about 5 months ago or so. And prior to joining Integrity, I was with McKinsey and Company, a global management consulting firm. And there I was part of the healthcare practice, actually. So while, Integrity is certainly focused on health, life, and wealth holistically, I unabashedly come from a health background. Spent 7 years at McKinsey and focused a lot on the healthcare market, a lot on Medicare. Worked with a lot of payers and the insurance companies and really understand where they're coming from. Certainly worked with distribution, worked with providers, worked with services companies, worked with private equity that wants to know where to invest money in the market and all of that. And it was the privilege of a lifetime. I met so many smart people and got to, bite off a lot of exciting challenges, problems, opportunities. But then when Brian Adams calls you and says there's an opportunity to kind of work together at Integrity, thinking about the leadership and the role that Integrity plays in the market, you say, where can I sign on the dotted line? And so joined Integrity about 5 months ago, as you said, Todd, as a chief strategy officer, and just what a treat to work with those folks on a daily basis. Integrity is a platform. It's an incredible platform full of incredible companies like IFC. And just it is an absolute blast and a privilege and the most fun I've ever had going to work in the morning.
Awesome. I have to ask you personally, what does a chief strategy officer do?
It's funny. At a place like Integrity, there's smart people that do a lot of things and are very busy and very productive. Our distribution team, Ryan Kimball, the president of Integrity Health. I mean, there's just nobody else you would want leading health distribution in the country than someone like Ryan Kimball. Hirsch Single, our chief technology officer, and all that we're doing with Integrity Connect, just incredible. The thing that Integrity needed is somebody to go do all the new things. What are the things we're not doing yet that there isn't a person to go do? And so strategy is what? It's all the things we're not yet doing. It's where the puck is moving. It's what the market needs from us. And so it's making sure what? It's making sure that we can bring together things across the company. We have 200 incredible companies. How do we think about making the most of collaborating and bringing the best to bear for agents and beneficiaries? How do we think about making sure that we're bringing new products to market? And, ICRA is so hot. How do we make sure that ICRA is accessible to the Integrity agents and that there's training and support there? How do we bring new offerings to agents so that they want to be part of Integrity? So Todd, when you and the IFC team or whoever go out to market, Integrity is out there helping you, right? Technology, an incredible platform, rolling out the E&O insurance and things of that nature. We want to continue to deliver things cheaper and better for agents. And so as I think about it, my job is really to take all the great things that Integrity does and say, can we make it 5, 10, 15% better with some added mind share and capacity that's focused on all the new things that we haven't done yet?
Awesome. And just for everybody listening and myself, what skill set does McKinsey bring to the market? Because I think everybody that's in health insurance knows that they have something to do with talking to the insurance companies and possibly some product design.
Yeah, I mean, I would say McKinsey, the value proposition is a few things. One is just this incredible market-backed perspective of having worked across the industry, having people with different backgrounds and skills and all of that, right? And then building a series of technology and data assets and capabilities and things like that. And so the goal is to say, if you're an insurance company or you're any company and you're facing a problem that you haven't faced before, or you have a new question, or you need to build a new capability, what you need to do is call people who have done it before or can help you do it when you don't have the people that have done it before or whatever the case may be. And so at McKinsey, you sit there every day and you get to solve really exciting problems. There's an at-risk provider group that is incredible at delivering care to seniors, but they don't know how to grow. There is an MA plan that has really, a really great care management team, but doesn't quite know how to build the product such that the supplemental benefits resonate. Whatever that is, right? You kind of end up being there to support organizations and partner with them to figure out what they can't figure out on their own. And that was incredibly fun and exciting and a heck of a way to learn about how this market works because you see it from all angles and you see it where it's hard. At the end of the day, people don't hire McKinsey when things are easy. People hire McKinsey when things are hard. And so spent 7 years focused on the hardest problems.
Awesome, awesome. You know, we're predominantly based in the upper Midwest. Minnesota is one of the crazy companies this year, or kind of states in this year in what's happening, but it's not isolated. And it's happened for like 2 years now, and I know that we're feeling it the hardest. Last year, I was bragging about how wonderful my regionals are, and then I didn't know how stressed they were becoming. So, in taking a more encompassing view, not just Minnesota, what has to happen to bring back a viable market for agents in the health markets?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess the first thing I would say when we talk about it, and it's such a big bucket. We'll talk about a few things here. Is the first thing I would say is I have an immense amount of empathy. It's not the word that we usually start with on this. Maybe we do in some context, but I have empathy. And maybe the counterintuitive part is I have empathy for three different groups. The first is I have a lot of empathy for the carriers. These regional, like not-for-profit carriers that are very mission and community oriented, they do not desire to be in this context for a second. And I served a number of not-for-profit, very mission-oriented, healthcare insurance companies when I was at McKinsey. I have many friends and colleagues there now. And goodness gracious, does the idea of not serving every county in a state or not wanting to serve every beneficiary in the state possible, like that's anathema to their mission. And that is hard. And so we all have to internalize that their economics have to be so upside down sometimes to make some of these decisions. And for that, I have empathy because I think they want to grow with all of us and they want to serve more customers. And it's not in anyone's interest to be moving backwards. So I have a lot of empathy. The next group,
So,
oh, go,
yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead, Todd.
No, I was just saying to expand on that. We've been talking, and if we want to talk about the Minnesota market, before we had the large UCare bailout or whatever you want to call it, fail, we were being told by all of our regionals they were losing north of $150 a month per member per plan before having to take this on. So it's impossible not to be empathetic, if not to even sympathetic to what they had to deal with going into this market. And again, what has to happen to kind of get us through this?
Yeah. So let's talk about it. We talk about the other two groups. The last two groups that I have a lot of empathy for are the agents who are experiencing the byproduct of it and the beneficiaries who are the biggest byproduct of it, right? Losing choice and losing guidance where the agents can't be there to support them, where the carriers and everyone aren't creating an environment that's hospitable, right? So if we think about what has to change to sort of change the tide for all of these groups, we have to sort of understand how we got here, right? And if we were to unpack, because the real driver of this is carrier economics being upside down. When carrier economics are right side up, they want to grow. They want to build products that are very attractive. They want to work with agents to help more beneficiaries. And we get to that, what I would call a virtuous feedback loop. We get in a cycle where everyone wins. So how do we get out of this cycle of challenge, right? We got to talk about what got us here. So what got us here is a few things that are very academic, and I'll move through them quickly because they're not that interesting, right? But one is that obviously we had a few years around the COVID pandemic when no one used healthcare. We then came out of the COVID pandemic and everyone used healthcare, and that meant the insurance companies went from not spending a lot of money to spending a lot of money. That's workable, and there's fail safes in the system for that. But it came at the same time that we introduced new risk adjustment protocols, which meant that the carriers were not as readily or as easily getting compensated for the risk of the membership. The STARS program, which we talk a lot about, and is just as someone who spent time thinking about carrier economics, STARS and risk adjustment were the two of the biggest things we spent time on. So when there are headwinds in those departments, those are enormous, right? So that's the third thing. The fourth thing is there were a few years there where government reimbursement on Medicare was lagging inflation, lagging utilization, and things of that nature. And there's complicated reasons why all of these things happen. And it's for the most part really good intentions of good people trying to do the right thing, and a confluence of ooh, that one hurt, and ooh, that one might have missed by a year, and this and that, and we end up down 15% margin on economics, and that's not sustainable for anybody, no matter how well their intentions are. So let's talk about what's going to change and what has to change. The good news is that as we look at this year, we would see that the government reimbursement is on a good trajectory in recovering. We would say the star ratings this year were the most stable they have been in a long time. And some carriers, would take Humana as an example, say that they really see optimistic indicators for the future, right? So that's really exciting. We would say the risk adjustment changes that happen, it's called V28. That's pretty much all phased in at this point, and there's not a lot of new hits and all of that. The post-COVID utilization spike and things like that, you can debate it. This is all very complicated. But what would we say about all of this? We would say the pain is mostly in the rearview mirror. And so now, and you can read this in the publicly traded earnings reports, Todd, you and me, the conversations we have with carriers, we're starting to hear this from them too, right? We say there was a lot of pain to income statements and balance sheets, which meant there was a lot of pain to agents and beneficiaries when they had to make tough choices. And now, hopefully, we've kind of eaten our vegetables, so to speak, and now we get to transition to dessert a little bit more, and we're coming out of the hard time. So what you have to believe is that everybody has done the hard stuff so that we can get back to the fun stuff. And if we're not there yet, we're 12 or 18 months away. Are we going to have one more tricky upside down cycle? Maybe, but I think we're getting really close to it. And goodness gracious, the beneficiaries who keep getting swung around and keep getting, plans and negative AMOCs and all of that, they really need it. They need a moment of stability. One of the things, and then I'll pause, one of the things that our research showed at McKinsey is just continuity moves the needle. It moves the needle for quality, it moves the needle for satisfaction. Everybody wants stability. And that's just on the beneficiary side. Agents want stability too. And so we are getting really close to that place that a beneficiary can build a relationship with an agent, a plan, a provider, care manager, all of the specialists, whatever the case may be, and not be at risk of having the economics of a plan turn their own economics and access upside down. So we are on the precipice. We just have to believe that all of this hard actions that the carriers have taken are going to allow the carriers to now get right back in that cycle of reinvestment, which is where we all want them.
Yeah, some of the rumor mill out a bunch in the field is that if things like the stars and the reimbursement rates kind of come back into form, then some of these lost commissions may be getting replaced. Have you heard some of that grumbling and rumors?
At the end of the day, a very important tenet to understand is that broker commissions are a very small part of carrier economics. They turn off commissions not to save money on commissions, but because these are areas where they're just so uniformly upside down, they don't want to grow. So if reimbursement is there and stars are there, commissions will be there because carriers want to pay where the economics are right side up. And so we should bet that a rising tide will lift all boats and have an immense amount of confidence about that. And the tide is looking optimistic as we get going.
Yeah, and not to just talk about MA products in this scenario where we're talking about, and if the premiums kind of start stabilizing that MA, do you still see a massive uptick on the med sub side like we're starting to see this year?
I think that what's happening is that what necessity is the driver of innovation or whatever that phrase is, right? MedSup sees a resurgence because it has to, but now it's back in the dialogue. It's back in brokers' portfolio. It's back in beneficiaries' minds. And you don't take that stuff out quickly. Now, obviously, does a $0 product that has dental and Part D and all of that start to win where it becomes viable again? That may just win on the merits. But when MedSup starts to become part of the conversation and MedSup rate increases can become less abrasive as utilization mellows out and things of that nature, right? You might end up with a world where MedSup can, in the long run, just remain more competitive.
Okay.
And that would be good because as we think about beneficiary choice, for some number of years now, we've measured beneficiary choice and the average number of MA plans available per county and things like that. But where is the number of competitively priced med sup plans per county in that consideration too? Because a beneficiary's holistic consideration is gonna include Medicare supplement to be sure.
Right, we always talk about that lifetime arc of product is you start at healthy MA and you want to time it till you get in there. And I have one of our field guys, Chris Gleiser, always says, and we're always so good at market timing. How good do you think we're going to be at health timing, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh my goodness gracious. I have a lot. That's impossible. It's a lagging. We're lagging, unfortunately.
yeah. And kind of again to kind of expand on the what is here and how do we get viable again? How, in your view, how do we address the fraud issues, rampant fraud?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is something that CMS certainly has an eye on. We've seen it in the ACA space. And I mean, at the end of the day, this is true of every industry in the world. If you are doing things right and you are a leader and you have, technology that is supporting you and call recording that is supporting you and compliant marketing that is supporting you, then this is a place where we just have to work with the regulators and work with it all. I mean, I think that, it is a place where the folks that are doing it right couldn't be more excited to see action taken. And I think this administration is just so consistent and serious from a fraud, waste, and abuse perspective. And they want beneficiary choice and they want beneficiary access. And they want it to come from the right folks with the right intentions and the right support infrastructure. And I think that is as true as anything. And so while we see puts and takes and challenges from an economics perspective, I think the regulatory environment right now is very helpful in this regard on really having such deep motivation to root out the bad actors. And I think it is just that much more important, if you think about whatever that suite is of good behaviors, right? Leveraging technology the right way, call recording, marketing, things of that nature. It's just all the more important to be getting it right now. And knowing that there's increased scrutiny and focus on the folks that are doing it wrong. And we're all gonna win when that stuff gets rooted out.
Okay. So kind of market dynamics there. What do you think the part the agent's going to play in a successful delivery of healthcare now, kind of going into the new, let's call it the new phase of this market?
Yeah, I mean, it is my perspective, and I will tell this to anybody that will listen, that the agent is going to play a bigger role in the future of good healthcare outcomes than ever before. And, what does that mean? It means that the provider choice and that selection, especially as we move back into more of an HMO world, getting the provider right and getting them quickly in the flow is so important. Getting the member engaged, especially as we think about the growth of CSNP and getting them into the right care programs, more important than ever before. Getting them onboarded and getting them engaged with supplemental benefits, as we think about supplemental benefits being such a huge part of the buying decision, more important than ever before. And so let's just take those three as an example, right? One is infrastructure around CSNP. Number two is provider choice and access around HMO. And number three is supplemental benefits utilization. Carriers spend so much money. They hire call centers, they run mailing campaigns just to try to communicate to members about things that the agent is already talking to the member about. And so if we are able to just communicate and partner with the carriers in new ways and say, guys, pause. You spend all this money when you see a new name on an enrollment report come in on the first of the month. That's great. That's good and well. But why don't you go back to that agent that has spent an immense amount of time with that beneficiary, probably over the course of years and maybe multiple plans, right? And say, here are our goals as a plan. This is what is going to make your client successful, sticky, happy, healthy, right? Can you be that conduit? Can you be that connection point from us to them that gets them doing the right things that they're going to want, things that they're going to be excited about, right? And how do we incentivize and motivate the agent to play that role? I mean, it is just my perspective, undoubtedly, having looked at this for nearly a decade now between McKinsey and Integrity, that when you're using, especially with something like Integrity Connect and the Integrity technology, it is just undeniable that this is how, if we think about what we have to do in the new healthcare, new MA environment, especially, this is how. So everyone's going to win, and the agent's going to have to be the hero and at the center of it.
I know we talked with a regional based in the upper Midwest, and you brought up a fact about the difference between an agent's communication and the insurance company. And I think you used the idea of if it maybe came from the agent's mailbox or address and it was talking about fall prevention, how much more readily that piece would be opened than it would be from the insurance company. I think you had some stats around that.
Yeah, well, I mean, so what I have seen in my time, and I worked with a number of these like member engagement companies and things like that, right? Vendors that payers hire and spend an really incredible amount of money on. What we see is that those folks get 25 or 30% engagement rates, maybe 35 if they're good. What I can tell you is any member that enrolls in a plan with an agent, that agent has a 100% engagement rate. It might feel like 110% engagement rate some of the time, right? And so carriers are chasing bad money after good money, right? They're spending money on all these new ways to reach a client that agent has already reached, right? So if we think about that, and we think about the economics, the money that goes into this, you talked about the carriers are losing $150 per member per month. I can tell you they might be spending 10, 15, 20 of that on member engagement vendors that aren't working. And if we think about successfully engaged members, members that retain, members that proactively engage in their care, that's where carriers make money. And so this is the exact kind of thing that when we collaborate, we win, and it creates stability in the market. And so that's a huge thing. I mean, if you think about it, I know how I'm seeing agents engaging with beneficiaries in new ways, right? Sometimes it's text message, sometimes it's phone, sometimes it's in person, sometimes it's mail, sometimes it's all of the above. The key thing is the agent knows how that beneficiary wants to be engaged, how their clients like to be spoken to. They know everything about the client. The carrier is just guessing, really.
So that's a great segue. And the third question I wanted to make sure we addressed is what new ideas are you energized by in this industry, and how do you think they're going to affect distribution?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think, we've talked about a number of things about the economics and the engagement and all of that. So maybe I'll just touch on a new thread for a second, which is, I'm not going to ask you, Todd, because who knows, but I'll tell you that if when my wife and I want to go somewhere, we don't go to delta.com or americanairlines.com. I go to Google Flights or I go to Expedia because I have been trained to know that there are so many options out there and there are so many times and so many prices and so many connections. I just moved to Dallas from Pittsburgh. When I lived in Pittsburgh, I connected to go everywhere, right? I will lay over this city, that time, whatever it is. The complexity was immense. It's nowhere near like the complexity of a Medicare Advantage plan, but it was decently complex. And I was always going to want some sort of unbiased mechanism to compare. Delta could market to me all day long, but I didn't really care because I was going to buy what made the most sense at that time based on my needs. And at the end of the day, that is exactly what we are finding in Medicare Advantage, which is that the carriers are not necessarily going to, at scale, really be able to reach the beneficiaries with branded marketing. It's really hard if you're a beneficiary and you know there's 50, 60, 70 Medicare Advantage options out there for you. You really want to be looking at the 70 and not the 8 that are offered by one carrier or whatever the case may be. And so one of the really big important things is that the beneficiaries now know that they have to start with a broad swath of the open market, which just really puts the agent at the center of it to translate, to simplify, to educate, right? And not only deepens that agent relationship, by the way, it makes the agent it puts the burden on the agent that much higher. If in my example, Google Flights stopped being accurate, that would throw my world upside down. That would really screw me up. The agents better be good. The agents better be using technology, have the right training, have the right resources, get the answers right. Because the beneficiaries need the agents now more than ever. And as plans evolve, think about what's happening. The pharmacy benefits on MA plans and cost sharing and formularies and tiering and all of that. I mean, we have to get it more right. And if I was an agent, I would need more help, right, from a technology perspective to be doing that.
And I think that some of the things that we've seen in the new energized systems and tech is that it's easier to quote some of the ancillary products. You call them
100%.
supplemental. We talk about that. Do you see those areas growing? The growth of hospital indemnities and cancers and things you can sell in scope and different
A hundred
designs?
percent. I think that what's happening is this moment where we stop having this simple singular MA sale and we go to a moment, a more holistic, both needs conversation from the beneficiary perspective, but then more holistic product conversation from an agent perspective. I don't think we unring that bell. And so for every agent who has taken this moment of challenge and turbulence and introduced themselves to annuities or life or hospital indemnity or cancer products or Medicare supplement and things of that nature, right? God willing, agents aren't going to forget that, right? And all that is going to mean is that the agent is going to be that much more valuable to the beneficiary because when everything becomes back on the table, everything remains on the table to the beneficiary. Choice expands. I'm a big choice guy. I like optionality, I like choice, and I like getting the thing that fits best. I'm not intimidated by having more wine bottles on the wall. I will find it. Don't simple it down to 6 for me, right? And I think that that's kind of what we need to do as a world is if we can be translators to bring many options, more options to customers, but help them still clients leave with the right thing, that's a win.
Yeah, I think some of the advancements on some of the products, like the new Med Sup having lifetime commissions, if they're willing to take some underwriting things, I think I think necessity will spur innovation, obviously, and from bad times will come good. But I think that the impact that distribution is going to have is going to be educating probably a lot of end users with new choices they're not familiar with and more bundled options potentially. Would you
A hundred
agree?
percent. I've spent a lot of time, this AEP, my first with integrity, but before this AEP started, I've spent a lot of time going to a lot of the sort of FMO rollout events and things like that. And I was just like inspired by the energy. Folks were really energized as much as the moment is hard. People were like, I'm gonna figure it out. We got to get through it. But the other thing is just the way that people are being so much more thoughtful in my language, I would call it the needs assessment, right? You can call it the sales motion. I don't care what you call it. I call it the needs assessment, right? Being so much more thoughtful in the way people are able to ask questions about long-term care needs, about cancer prevalence in the family, about retirement planning, and about financial needs and things like that, right? About at Integrity we would say planning for the good days ahead, right? But people are now expanding what used to be a simple conversation about can I find you the right Medicare Advantage plan to being such a more holistic conversation of needs, wants, family history, unknown unknowns, right? The things you don't even know you need yet. We're all going to win in the long run because of that, and beneficiaries are too.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm like super optimistic about the agents that are going to be able to cross sell or be more holistic are obviously the people who are going to win. They're also going to scale better and they're going to be able to look at larger multiples when it comes to selling their practice or sending it downstream. One of the big factors that the agents, I mean, I already did a lot of different things, but it really kind of put a spotlight on how rampant the drug cost continues to climb and how that tends to mess with a lot of the base plans. And as far as things going in and out of commissionable, there's nothing that's been more volatile. Where do you think that Part D goes, or drug planning in pharma in general? That could be a whole
Yeah,
another podcast, I know, but let's take the 1,000 foot view and maybe see what we can do here.
I have a lot of perspectives about a lot of things. This is one where I don't know where it's going. This is so hard. I have been a few thoughts. So first, let's take a step back. When I was at McKinsey, I worked with a number of the large national health plans and large PBMs and things like that. And I think we continue to see publicly what I was seeing behind the scenes, which is a combination of an appreciation that the status quo isn't working or going to last with a need for innovation, but everybody kind of feeling the walls of what that innovation is going to look like, right? It's far away from a day-to-day need of an agent or a beneficiary. But when I read the news and I see new things around PBMs and all of that, right? I'm feeling that we're just a couple of years away from that trickling down to real innovation, right? Certainly what we're seeing with the direct distribution on the GLP-1s and things like that, which by the way are a source of a lot of the high cost in the system right now. And it's complicated because people need them. We're just seeing immense success and great things, right? From a customer perspective, access, 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 right? All to say, I don't know where this one is going. I know, Todd, you've seen some of the innovation that folks are doing with the prescription drug cards and things like that. And I think that if it means that we end up in a more complicated but competitive market where people have new diverse offerings and isn't just, oh yeah, here's your meds up and here's your PDP, good luck, right? Whatever the case may be, like I think we're going to end up better, mostly because we can't end up worse than we are right now. But goodness gracious, from a prescription
Yeah.
drug perspective, I have a lot of empathy and it is quite challenging.
I'm kind of crossing my fingers in regards to the part of the big beautiful bill is that the large insurance carriers could actually jointly negotiate with some of pharma now when it was considered illegal to do that. And it's not considered collusion if you're trying to do the best thing for the end client. So hopefully that can get some momentum and they can play together in the same sandbox. And I think they want to.
A
I think
hundred
they
percent.
have to. I think they have to. I think it's flat out have to. Um, so we're kind of rounding the third base, heading to home here. We talked a little bit about integrity, and it'd be wrong if don't want to ask you as a chief strategist is what is integrity creating as a new value prop to insurance companies, to insurance networks, and most importantly to agents.
So a few things. So one is that at the end of the day, integrity is really this exciting intersection of distribution and an agent and agency force that is so immense with technology. What we are seeing is agents with technology are unstoppable. Agents alone are incredible. Technology alone is okay, but agents with technology is freaking unlocked, right? That is where we're seeing so much from a productivity increase, from an engagement increase, from an efficiency increase. That is really the unlock. So first and foremost, what's going on with Integrity Connect at Integrity right now is incredibly exciting. And if I was a carrier or an agent or a beneficiary, I would be really excited about it. And what's happening there is that we are increasing the ability for agents to professionalize and enable their business, right? Call recording, email, personal website, really sophisticated CRM and tags and things of that nature, right? All, by the way, at no cost to the agents. So that's all really exciting. But then what is happening is it's increasing with Ask Integrity and AI and things of that nature. It's increasing the agent's ability to put the beneficiary in the right plan. And if I'm a beneficiary or a carrier, that's all you could ever want, right? Call recording, compliant, and ending up in the plan of best fit, right? So from an integrity perspective, that is really central to the value creation. And just every single day trying to make that better for the agents and the beneficiaries is so huge. Then the other thing I would say is that, I spend a lot of time thinking about how we can deliver world-class service and really just be an indispensable partner to more agents and agencies. And so just this week we rolled out Integrity Errors and Emissions E&O insurance. It is at a lower cost with superior benefits to anything that exists in the market. And E&O insurance isn't the point. And it's not central, but what it is it's part of an evergreen commitment of a leadership team that wants to keep bringing value, delivering value, proving value to agents and agencies. And I promise it is just the beginning of it. And we want to bring more things to every agent and agency that works with an integrity business anywhere in the country. And working on 5 more at the moment. And the commitment is to, integrity, the relationship between an agent or an agency with integrity often starts with a relationship with a marketer somewhere in the country, with a business unit somewhere. Someone meets a great colleague at IFC, or they meet a great colleague at Agent Pipeline or AGA or whatever it is. And that's incredible. But then how can integrity, capital I integrity, make that experience even better by bringing tools, technology, and other offerings and resources that make it the place to be for happier and more successful agents who can serve more beneficiaries?
Awesome. Awesome. I know that RI is interested in finding better ways for agents to be better agents. And we released and started a program called the Gold Experience that, along with what Integrity does with its data set, we actually take the same data set and start marketing all the products that either the agent hasn't chose to offer, and we'll help teach them to sell it, but we'll actually be touching them on journeys throughout the year with different ideas for their clients that are buying them from somewhere. We're helping them maximize that opportunity. Plus, we're going to be plugging in different options that will look at people that most look like they'll buy an annuity in their set. And some of these data providers and these programs are 80 to 90% accurate. And so we're finding annuity options and annuity growth in agents' books that they've never had. And when they're losing Part D revenue and they see us like Integrity being proactive and helping them grow, and then we take that another level with the Gold Experience, I feel like we're kind of creating a value prop that nobody else is going to want to deal with it. But what we have to have is, it seems like we have to have a CMS response that seems pro agent. And I think to date it's kind of been skewed. How do you think to kind of wrap this up with a good potential silver lining here? Where do you see the CMS responsibility in this whole thing? And then what is the new independent agent model going to kind of roll out here in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would take a slightly different lens at it, which is to be pro agent is to be pro choice and pro profitability. And so if CMS can help bring stability to the market, we're going to be pro agent, because what's going to happen is we're going to end up with more carriers that want to grow, more competitive prices, and more optionality in the market. And so what we need to do is certainly not take any punitive actions towards agents, besides fraud, waste, and abuse, and rooting out bad actors, which I think has been great, and everything in that regard has been very positive. And then just trying to stabilize the ecosystem. I mean, the biggest thing, honestly, that has happened this entire year from CMS for Medicare, if we were to take a very simple lens, is that rate increase that just is allowing carriers every little bit of day to get a little more money in the ecosystem and get it there, right? The rate increase was good. Star rating stability and positivity was good. And we are just on a journey, right? We're on a journey to just take the boat that was on its tipping on its side and get it right back upright. And then we're going to have a bunch of boats racing to add membership. And so I think that we can debate what needs to be done and all of that. I think we have an amazingly pro-agent infrastructure right now. The people that are most pro-agent, by the way, are the beneficiaries who need agent help and the carriers who need agents to grow, right? If there's one thing to think about from this conversation is that beneficiaries need agents, good agents with technology to distill plan choice, and carriers will want to grow and they're going to need agents to do it because they want the Google Flights experience and not the single branded experience. When carriers and beneficiaries need agents, we just need an ecosystem that is hospitable because the agent is going to be the hero at the center when everyone starts winning again.
Yeah, and I think the IMO's piece now is probably as important as anybody for that conduit between the types of technology that might be used. The ability to work with an IMO that it can give a discounted rates on things like the Integrity Connect platform, offer things like the Gold Experience, or what it is, T65 leads, those type of things, is they have a buying power set different than the agent and the agency. So I believe all these value props, and I always love your energy, Gabe, because it always makes me feel better no matter what I'm kind of dealing with up here. But any last words to kind of talk forward or talk through or recap kind of your messaging?
Yeah, yeah. Here's what I'll tell you. My wife sent me a reel on Instagram last night, and it was a child in the grocery store, and the child had two baskets, right? And it was this whole thing about if you go and just show the child how to lift all the handles and everything, that's fine. They'll carry the baskets. But watching the child struggle for about 20, 30 seconds and then pick up the baskets and be able to figure out how to get the handles to all come up with just two hands and two baskets is gratifying. And it's how you learn and grow. And it's a little bit of a fraught analogy, but I think that's the moment that we're in right now, right? This is not pleasant and the struggle is not fun. And I have an immense amount of empathy for every agent and beneficiary that is struggling in this moment. But what's happening is beneficiaries via the agent are learning about products they didn't ever knew existed. They're having financial needs met with annuities. They're thinking about, more broad set of needs between long-term care, cancer, hospital indemnity, whatever it is. They're thinking about Medicare supplement, which, depending on economics, may have been the right fit all along, and the agents might just not have had that in the toolkit, right? And so this struggle is making us that much more capable and diverse on the other side when the rising tide lifts all boats again. And so I think that we're building muscles, we're building a toolkit, we're building capabilities that are going to just pay dividends down the road. And the best thing we can do now is survive in advance, maintain those relationships with that broad client base so that you may not have the right thing for them today, but God knows 12 months from now, you're certainly going to have the right thing for them. And it's just about those relationships, and we're going to get there.
Yeah, I just saw a little podcast with Mark Cuban on it, and kind of the overlapping message he wanted to say is the lady asked him, he said, when you're in a down market, how do you get out of it? Or when you're in trouble, he said, I sell out of it. I boost my sales. I look at different things in sales and I double down in sales. And when you talk about the potential that I know a lot of the agents right now are really struggling with, can I afford to offer my services for free? So remember, we have an underlying current that the commissions may be brought back in. We have the ability to sell more products now than we've ever had a chance to now with an automated system that will show best of class, best of service, best of rate, and obviously most riders and most benefits. So we have this nice convolute of a chance to really kind of sharpen that sword, or however you want to look at it, to get incredibly good at what we do now. And then once things get back into place and the rising tide hits where maybe the commissions come back in, then this time that they spent possibly without commissions will actually come back two, three, fourfold. So that's what I hang my hat on. I just kind of always talk about when we're talking to agents is we'll figure out the rules, we'll tell you how to win. And I think, Gabe, your insight really gives us ideas, not only if we can figure out how to win and get through now, how much a better position we're going to be in the future, and then giving us some of the tools and expertise that's coming down the line. I can't thank you enough for your positivity always. This is a super easy area to get negative in. And I love that your positivity is that this is an opportunity, and we always feel that way too. So from the agents listening in, they either work with IFC or don't. And for everybody else, I thank you, Gabe, for your time. And I thank everybody on the podcast today for your time too. Thanks a bunch, everybody.